I got a pretty wife. Got a pretty wife, big house. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. Jesus wasn't gay. He never had sex with his disciples. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Jesus never had sex with his disciples. He didn't love them. That's fucking stupid. With them, never became one with his disciples. That's fucking retarded. Like that's all gay shit. That's all gay stuff, man. Jesus became one with his disciples. He became one. We became one. All right. So this is going to be a redo. This is not going to be a genuine YouTube reaction. I watched this. I reacted to this video already, but my setup was I had not set up my equipment correctly. I was using the microphone on my webcam and got terrible audio, and then I also was using the speakers uh, for me to listen to the video, which ended up resulting with an echo in my reaction video, which made it almost impossible to listen to. So I actually just went out and bought this microphone here at Walmart just now, just so I could come back and redo this video and actually have a decent video. So this is kind of new to me. So Matt Walsh. I'm reacting to Matt Walsh talking about gender ideology is a pervasive and toxic influence in Western culture. That's off the top of my head. I remember that. Hopefully, I got that right because I can't see it at the moment. I'm looking at the screen. I'm looking at is very small. So uh, this was something that came up in my YouTube suggestion. You know how YouTube has its own like little news feed type thing, like suggestion feed. So Matt Walsh was somebody that I've watched before. I've seen his videos before. I don't remember what they were about. There was a time when I used to watch quite a bit of like the Daily Wire stuff, Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, is that his name? The Rubin Report, yeah, I believe that's his name. Uh, there was a really good episode on that Daily Wire with Jordan Peterson and a few other guests I've seen that were really just good episodes. So Matt Walsh is he is not, from what I recall, he is not really that far outside kind of what you might call people I would ordinarily listen to. I'm not totally fond of Matt Walsh or people like Ben Shapiro. I do like Dave Rubin. Among those three, I like him the best. But I don't know if Matt Walsh is on the Daily Wire now. I'm not sure what that is. I don't remember where I saw his videos at, but he seems like a fairly smart man, but he also does seem fairly biased. He seems like someone who was raised in a kind of conservative environment, someone who was just very conservative himself, almost kind of like people in my own family. Just a kind of Andy Griffith type person. Somebody who, if they saw you with pink hair, they're going to automatically make assumptions about you, kind of thing. Of course, I am making assumptions about him, right? But he is. I actually considered doing a reaction to his documentary, "What Is a Woman?" But when I saw clips from it, I thought this kind of looks dumb. It looks like a very badly, as far as arguments go, it just looks like it's not a very good argument. Which was this case for Ben Shapiro's debunking the transgender myth, I believe is what it was called. It was just a really just poorly executed argument, and I actually did a reaction to that one, I believe, but I think I deleted it, or I think I had issues with that one too. This was a while back. So, but So I saw this video, I saw the title, and I figured this is a clickbait title, right? This is a little bit propagandish. It's not a very clear title. It's not because, and that's kind of how propaganda works, right? Like it works by being kind of ambiguous and just not clear, just kind of riding on common assumptions and that sort of thing. So one of the things that's not clear is it starts off with gender ideology is a pervasive and toxic influence. And whether it's in Western culture or whatever, it doesn't really matter. That just starting off with that is unclear because what gender ideology are they referring to? It's like titling a video "Political ideology is pervasive and toxic." Well, of course, political ideology is pervasive, but what political ideology are you talking about when you call it toxic? So gender ideology is something that most people have. Most people already have their own kind of ideas, which is what an ideology is, right? About what gender is. So whose gender ideology are you referring to? That's where it's a little bit like it makes it just propaganda because it almost seems as if though the point of this video is to try to shut down talks about gender. It's like saying I'll get to it in the video because he makes a point to what I'm saying. Uh, but I'll get to that. But so yeah, so I started out watching this video just feeling like this is going to be a biased. This is going to be a biased talk, and it was actually worse than I expected. But we'll get into it.
And now something I've been waiting weeks to bring you. It's the extraordinary Matt Walsh, the man behind the groundbreaking documentary, What is a Woman?
What is a woman? Can you tell me that? Well, you're at the Women's March. You must have some idea. Please, if one person could tell me what a woman is.
You are not here for women. We ask you to leave.
What is that? A woman is not anything in particular.
There is not one particular thing.
It could be many things to many people.
Some women have penises, right? Some men have vaginas.
I like scented candles, and I've watched Sex and the City.
Yeah.
How do I know if I'm a woman?
That's a great question.
You're not a scientist. You're not a gender studies major.
No.
How do you know that you're a man?
I guess because I got a dick.
Can a man become a woman?
I'm not a woman, so I can't really answer that.
Women only know what women are.
Are you a cat?
No.
Can you tell me what a cat is? Do you want to tell us what a woman is?
This 95-minute documentary is from author, speaker and podcast host Matt Walsh. He also has a book by...
Now, just looking at those clips, like if that's kind of the way the documentary goes, that by itself is enough for me to be like, yeah, this is a waste of time. There are kind of arguments that are hinted at in that they're not really expounded upon, but they're just like it's to call them fallacious. I don't want to go into that because, like I said, they're not expounded on. Like the guy who says, "Well, I know I'm a man because I have a dick," as though this were somehow some kind of evidence towards the idea that having a dick is what makes somebody a man. Even though in our culture, most people know that's not the case. And what I mean is that, like, I dated a girl for 4 years, and we broke up when I joined the army, and then I came back from the army, and we got back together. And we broke up again. This time it was her who broke up with me. The first time it was me who broke up with her. But so we were out at dinner, and she says to me, this is not working. She said, "You're not a man." And I was not dressed like this then. I was not wearing wigs, makeup. I did not do stuff like that then. I was not thinking that I was trans or anything like that. So it was what was she talking about when she said you're not a man? Was she saying you don't have a penis? I'm fairly certain that's not what she meant. So most people, I would say most people in America know what that means if a girl says to a guy, "You're not a man." If, for example, Joe Biden were caught sucking the dick of Vladimir Putin, people would say, people, well, I'm not going to say as though I know what people would say, but I would expect people to say things like, Biden is not a man. Uh, would anybody question whether Biden has a penis or not? I doubt they would question whether he has a penis, but they would question his manhood. So that is what I'm talking about. People in our society already have this general kind of not really defined or well-defined idea about gender and what it, you know, how it works. So because of the whole thing of, person's manhood or a male's manhood can be questioned. So this is why you have ideas like men have to prove their manhood, or if you don't act like a man, people will start to think you're not a man. That's that's is. So when you ask somebody a question like that, well, how do you know you're a man? Well, it's because I have a dick. Is that really is that all there is to it? Is what's this guy's name? He used to do the aerobics guy. Would you believe me if I told if I told you that people said he's not a man? So I'm not making a cute point here. I'm actually trying to point out something that is a problem with what I see here. That gender is something that's already people already have this idea that gender is more than just sex. That gender and sex are not the same thing. That gender is there's more to gender than just genitalia. This is, I would say, most obvious with men. It is somewhat obvious with women too, but not as obvious. I don't think like the whole notion of like questioning a woman's womanhood. Uh, I don't hear about. But so this is not the point that I'm going to ride on. I'm not going to just say like this is how I'm going to refute what he's saying. But so we'll go on with the show here.
By the same name, and he travelled across America and other parts of the world seeking to answer that key question. I began by asking Matt why he made this documentary in the first place.
Why did you make this documentary, Matt Walsh?
Well, it starts with just recognizing that gender ideology is this pervasive, toxic influence in our culture across the world, across the Western world anyway, and also realize.
Hold on. I think I want to repeat that part right there.
Well, it starts with just recognizing that gender ideology is this pervasive, toxic influence in our culture.
So already straight out of the gate, he's starting off with this kind of propagandish statement. How do they put it? It starts with recognizing that gender ideology is. I mean, he basically repeats what's in the title. What gender ideology are you talking about, Matt Walsh? What is the gender ideology that you're talking about? What are the specific what are they called? Tenets. What are the tenets of this gender ideology that you're talking about? Are you talking about what's in the DSM? Or are you talking about something article that you read about transgender stuff? Or are you talking about what ideology are you referring to? If we're going to talk about political ideology, what political ideology are you referring to? Is it? I mean, you can be as vague as liberalism or conservatism, which is pretty vague, right? But if you want to talk about like say religious ideology, what religious ideology are you referring to? So that's where this just seems like a kind of just broad kind of just attack against this allows the viewer to kind of just make their own assumptions. It's like, well, some guy who's watching this says, "Oh, I've heard people talking about this gender stuff. It's all bad. It's just bad. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. It's all bad. It's toxic and pervasive."
Across the world, across the Western world anyway, and also realizing that in spite of the fact that it's been so successful in claiming so many people's minds, it is really quite hollow at its core. And it seemed to me, going back years, that just a couple of questions really bring down the whole house of cards.
So what does he mean by claiming people's minds? Does he make the assumption that any trans person or any person any male who puts on women's clothing and wigs that my mind claimed by gender ideology? Is that what he means to say? What does he mean to say there? I mean, is he aware that trans people have existed for thousands of years? Is this what was he? Is the gender ideology of trans people now different from the gender ideology of trans people in ancient Rome or ancient Greece? What is he talking about here? It's
Starting with the question, which is in the title of the movie, of course, what is a woman? If you can't define what the word woman is, then nothing that the gender ideologues say makes any sense. None of the claims that they make any sense if they can't define the
claim?
term. And as we discovered filming the documentary, they certainly cannot define the term.
No, they can't. Even women at the Women's March were completely baffled by that question and didn't feel confident committing an answer. Now, there is a hero that emerges in this documentary. You've said that Scott Nugent is the hero of the film. Let's hear what they have to say.
We have 5 children's hospitals in the United States promoting that. That's a phalloplasty. That's a bottom surgery. We have 5 children's hospitals in the United States telling girls that they can be boys at $70,000 a pop in a surgery that has a...
All right, so we're supposed to be talking about gender ideology here, but now we're talking about the actions of 5 hospitals in the United States, as though this has something to do with gender ideology. So that's how propaganda is done. I believe that's called guilt by association. That's a logical fallacy when you try to tie one thing to another that is a problem, but you associate it with something else, which you're trying to make an argument against. So in this case, he's trying to make an argument against gender ideology, and he's doing it by associating it with the actions of 5 hospitals in the United States.
67% complication rate. That will kill me from infection. That I can't sue on. We're butchering a generation of children because nobody's willing to talk about anything.
All right, so now 5 hospitals in the United States are now responsible for butchering a generation of children. Is that propaganda? Now, I will point out that this is a very valuable point that they're actually harping on here. Because when I was first studying transgender stuff, and I was reading this stuff online, I was studying mostly male to female transgender stuff. I was not really interested in female to male. I did watch maybe 1 or 2 like transition videos from female to male, but probably watched 1,000 male to female. So, but one of the things that I read when I was studying this is that the number one regret for male to female, at least, in the process of transitioning, is the sex change surgery. This is the number one regret that's it's irreversible. Of course, you can't go back on that. So it's a friend of mine also told me that a friend of mine who is transgender told me that a psychiatrist that he talks to told him that sex change surgery is a sure way to ruin your life. Uh, but on the other hand, if you look at the medical industry's prescribed solution for the gender identity dysphoria, which is something that's not mentioned here in this video, he doesn't talk about it at all, which is a very important part of what we might call the transgender identity. That is kind of the key ingredient is gender identity dysphoria, which is why talking about things like identifying as a cat, doesn't make any sense. But it's not mentioned here. The medical industries prescribe really the only solution that exists currently is hormone replacement therapy for that. Talking therapy does not work. Any kind of correctional therapy, trying to turn someone like me into a real man would not work. So maybe I am a real man. Still waiting to find out. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to point out that that is a valuable point they're making. It is not necessarily an argument against gender ideology, but it is an important point that they're making.
Really does take rare courage to put yourself out there and speak so honestly, Matt, because you know they're going to be attacked for telling their story.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And it's a really interesting contrast between, we talked, of course, to people on both sides of the issue, including so-called experts who are proponents of this stuff. And for them, they were very evasive, didn't want to talk about anything, always acting like they had something to hide, very vague and sort of abstract in their answers. Then we talked to Scott Nugent, and we just heard the clip there, and she's very open, very kind of raw and honest, willing to talk about anything, kind of laying it all out there. And I do find it to be heroic, especially, to go through the whole process of quote unquote transitioning and then to turn around and warn other people against it. I think that's a really powerful thing. And it's more powerful than, because you and I can sit here and say, here are the problems with these kinds of procedures. But for someone who's actually been through it and kind of crossed that bridge, for them to turn back around and shout to anyone else who might cross it and warn them against it, I think is even more powerful. So that's why I think that, interview in the film was really effective.
As you mentioned, you spoke to doctors who performed these surgeries, irreversible surgeries on some very young patients. Let's hear from one of those doctors you interviewed.
What's the youngest patient that you've operated on?
The youngest patient I've done vaginoplasty on is age 16.
Do you worry that minors just don't understand enough about themselves? They're not neurologically developed enough yet to make permanent life-altering decisions?
Absolutely not.
Just a very casual, dismissive attitude.
Here I'm going to repeat basically what I said in the first take, that as far as I know, there are basically two trans narratives as far as the life of a transgender person. One is the person who knew from the time they were born, not from the time they were born, but from the time they started to become like aware of who they are as a child. They knew then that they might not call it trans. They might be, maybe if they were born with a penis, they might say, well, I always knew that I was a girl. I always knew. I knew it from the time I was a child all the way up into my adulthood. And then there are people like me who I grew up thinking I was a boy, basically, but I always felt like something was wrong. My life, what ultimately led me to the idea that I was trans was the fact that I sucked at life. It was a very painful life. It was just a life of just constant pain. Just not having difficulty functioning in society. So I had the difficulty was noticeable enough that my parents they thought that I had autism because I was just kind of uh, just did not function well in society. I had trouble with relationships and that sort of thing, and I'm very intelligent. I have the potential that I could have been a doctor, a lawyer, something like that, a politician, maybe even. That I have the brain for it, but I have essentially lived the life of a loser. You know, doing stupid work, jobs I didn't like, a very unsuccessful life. And that was largely because of how painful it was for me just to try to get along in public, to get along in society. And over time, things just kind of, you might say, kept pointing me in the direction that it's because I was being fake, because I was basically pretending to be a man. I might, people might look at me and say, well, I am a man because I have a penis and I have a man's body. But from my perspective, I was essentially being an actor. And it wasn't until I started putting on like the wig and the makeup and the women's clothing that I started to feel like now I'm being a genuine person. So that is the second type of narrative. And I'm saying that because if at 16 years old, if I had gone to a doctor, uh, I would say that, if we were talking about this, I would say, no, looking back, I would say 16 is too young for me to have a sex change because even now at 46, I think that's a bad idea. I feel like even if a vagina is what I truly want, and that right now I don't, I'm still trying to explore this myself. I'm still trying to get through this myself and understand it. Uh, Basically, what I know about it is what I just said. That by doing this, I feel better about myself. I feel like my self-esteem has improved, and I feel like I'm more of a real person. But it's still a little bit of like a dark room where I'm just kind of just groping around with my hands trying to find the light switch on the wall. And so even if I thought maybe a vagina is what I want, I would say I'm not going to commit to that for like another 5 years because I think that would just be that's a very serious decision to make. But on the other hand, so the people who knew one from the time they were a child, some of these people I've seen or I've heard of or seen documentaries of like young boys who tried to cut their own penis off as a boy because it bothered them so much because they from the way they saw it they were a girl, they knew it at 100%. And for someone like that, maybe at 16, if they've for if they've been like say at least 12 years just waiting to get rid of their penis, I would say that's probably a good bet. I could be wrong. What I don't like to see are like if a trans person uh, is still kind of just not sure, they're still unhappy, and they're kind of like, well, maybe having a vagina will fix my problem. That's where I'd be kind of like, yeah, no, that's not it. That's not good logic there. It reminds me of like women who have children to because they're depressed. They're like, well, maybe if I have kids, I'll be happy. Then they have kids and they're still as miserable as they were before, and now they have children to take care of, and the children end up unhappy, yeah, or they end up giving them away like my mother did it, like my mother did. Oh me.
To a 16-year-old making a decision that is a lifelong decision. There's no coming back from that.
Right, there isn't. And, 16 is obviously very, very young, and it's horrific that we're doing that to 16-year-olds. But then you
We're
have to
doing that.
consider that many times kids are being put down this path at even younger ages. I mean, we talked to quote unquote gender affirming pediatrician who puts kids on drugs at 12 years old, 13 years old. So at very young ages, whether it's surgery or drugs that sterilize kids, we're being told that the child is, quote, making a decision at such a young age. But then, of course, it doesn't make any sense because even the people who support giving sex change surgeries to 16-year-olds, if you ask them, well, should a 16-year-old be able to get a tattoo on their face or anywhere else on their body? Should a 16-year-old be able to buy a gun, buy alcohol? Like any of these kinds of decisions, almost everybody would agree, well, no, that's too young. So if it's too young for that, then how's it not too young to make these life-altering, permanent changes to your body?
Here, I feel like this is a little bit trivial. 16. I mean, even if you say 18, I kind of feel like he would still have a problem with it. Because I do feel like, you can join the army at 18 years old and go fight for your country and potentially get killed at 18 years old. So really, how much changes from 16 years old to 18 years old? I mean, I remember being a sophomore in high school, and I remember being a senior in high school. There wasn't much change in that 2 years where I would say, yeah, an 18-year-old is really better than a 16-year-old. So I'm not trying to argue that it should be 16. What I'm trying to say is that what age is he thinking is a good idea? Does he think they should wait till they're 21? Or it kind of I get the impression that his take is that they shouldn't do it at all. Because if you can join the army at 18, why should you not be able to, change sex? You know, uh, but on top of that, I would point out that age limits when it comes to things like this, they are somewhat arbitrary. It's like you can join the army at 18 and go fight for your country and potentially lose your life or come back without legs, without arms, or with half your head missing. But you can't drink alcohol until you're 21. So is that logical, or is that just an arbitrary thing? What is that? Of course, you can drive a car at 16 and potentially kill yourself or kill somebody else out on the road as a 16-year-old who barely knows how to drive. So this point here, they're kind of just harping on this like 16 is too young. Is it really? Like when is what is he thinking is the right age? Is 21 old enough? Why does that matter? Is this toxic? Is it toxic to say that 16-year-olds can do this? Or would it be not toxic to say that 21-year-olds they should be 21? I mean, what's the point of this really? I'm not really sure.
That's the question they never have an answer to.
What question? What?
And talking about treatments for kids as young as 11 or 12, FINA has handed down its decision to restrict trans athletes from the women's side of the competition. But they did have one exception if someone had transitioned, if a male athlete had transitioned by the age of 12, then they would be able to compete in the women's competition.
So I don't know if you see the timeline here. We're over halfway through the video yet, and they still have not talked about gender ideology. They've talked about these kind of what you might call the hot button issues, like sex change surgeries for minors and that sort of thing. And now they're on to trans in female sports, which is, what does that have to do with gender ideology? This is more like you could take this out. Somebody could resolve that issue just by having transgender sports teams, and it would not change gender ideology. So what does this have to do with gender ideology? This is another example of just, they're not actually, this is more guilt by association, you might call it. They're just kind of just beating around the bush here.
competition. Now, FINA say this isn't to encourage anybody to transition that early, and they in fact say that's not a good idea. But you see this as almost a validation for transitioning children younger and younger.
Yeah, I don't. I know a lot of conservatives are celebrating this move, but I don't actually see it as a win. Now, the win would be if the governing bodies over these various athletic competitions, if they just said, hey, you have to be a woman to compete against women, period. It doesn't matter when you transition, doesn't matter anything else. You have to be a female to compete against women. Now, that would be a win for sanity and for just truth and moral decency. That's not what's happening here. All they're saying is, well, you have to, if a male wants.
There should be transgender sports, is what they should do. That's what instead of, you know, I realize that that is quite an accommodation. I don't want to get into like military stuff, like the military band and that kind of thing. Why it is a burden on the military to have to accommodate trans soldiers because the army is gender segregated. But I'm assuming it would be similar in sports because if you're, say, you're a high school and you have a girls soccer team and a boys soccer team, and you have one transgender girl who wants to play soccer, you can't have a trans soccer team just for that one girl. Just like in the army, you don't want to have to build a barracks just for the one transgender soldier. Uh, so that is a little bit of a there's not really a good solution to that, but from as far as I'm concerned, the only solution to that is to just start having trans sports. uh, yeah. Let's see.
Wants to compete against women, he needs to start his transition younger, which is actually legitimizes childhood transitions, and that's only going to be used by the other side to say, well, see, this is why we got to get the kids on the drugs as early as possible so that they're not left out of opportunities later in life. That's maybe looking at it as glass half empty, but that's also how I think it's going to be used.
It's half empty. It's my first one.
Oh gosh, I hope that's not seen or interpreted that way, but I can understand why you have that fear. Now, back to what is a woman. You spoke to plenty of experts, and some of them were triggered by the strangest things. Even the word truth was seen as triggering and transphobic. Let's have a look.
Well, I'm not talking about social context. I'm just trying to start by getting to the truth, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really uncomfortable with that language of like getting to the truth. Again, in social life.
Why is that uncomfortable?
Because it sounds actually deeply transphobic to me. And if you keep probing, we're going to stop the interview.
If I probe about what the truth is?
You keep invoking the word truth, which is condescending and rude. I'm saying to you.
How is the word truth condescending and rude?
Why don't you tell me what your truth is? And you're walking on 30 seconds more of thin ice before I get up.
How did you keep your cool throughout these interviews? Because just watching them is maddening. I mean, how can somebody...
This is another example here. We're still not talking about gender ideology. We're talking about a professor who apparently doesn't know how to communicate very well. Perhaps he's not confident in the subject matter. You know, perhaps he read a few articles and feels like he's not just. Well, let me go back and look at that because he might have actually been what was his area of study?
Comfortable.
Because yeah, I mean, I'm really uncomfortable with that.
Was seen as triggering and transphobic. Let's have a look. Back to what is a woman. You spoke to plenty of experts, and some of them were
So he's an expert apparently, but I'm not sure an expert in
by
what.
the strangest things. Even the word truth was seen as...
How is the word truth condescending and rude?
Why don't you tell me what your truth is? And you're walking on 30 seconds more of thin ice before I get up.
Matt, how did you keep your cool throughout these interviews? Because just watching them is maddening. I mean, how can somebody be so offended by truth, by the word truth, by the pursuit of truth?
Yeah, it was a challenge sometimes. Sometimes a challenge not to laugh in their face. Sometimes a challenge not to scream at the outrageous, ridiculous things I'm being told. But what you just heard there, that really, almost every conversation with these people eventually devolves into some version of that. You know, you get away from gender, and pretty soon you're getting into, well, what is truth? Is there a truth? Whose reality are we talking about? I mean, I had that kind of interaction so many times, because what you find out is that at base, at bottom, all this gender ideology stuff, it's really a war on truth. It's really, you know, it really comes down to relativism and the belief that that we all get our own.
So here he is talking about a war on truth. The gender ideology is basically a war on truth. But we still haven't talked about what gender ideology he's talking about, what the gender ideology is, what the tenets are, what are the basic axioms of this gender ideology. It's a war on truth, but we don't know what where is the attack in the gender ideology against truth. That's I don't.
Our own truth and our own reality, and I think that's ultimately what they're trying to defend, I think.
Well, it is. It is a denial of truth, a denial of logic, denial of biology sometimes. And
What
these conversations
is
that you had where you did keep your cool, my goodness, some of them are bordering on the absurd. We've got here another expert who's talking about, you know, whether chickens laying eggs have been assigned a gender.
Male gametes. That's what makes me male.
No, your sperm don't make you male.
Then what does?
It's a constellation.
In reality, in truth, okay?
Whose truth are we talking about?
The same truth that says we're sitting in this room right now, you and I.
No, you're not listening.
If I see a chicken laying eggs and I say that's a female chicken laying eggs, did I assign female, or am I just observing a physical reality that's happening in the world?
Are these paid actors?
Identity? Does a chicken cry?
Well,
Does a chicken commit suicide? Let's frame it, because you're trying.
Chicken has sex like any
Does a chicken cry?
organism.
An assigned gender, but a chicken doesn't have a gender identity.
So we assign female to chickens when they lay
This is funnier the second time than it was the first time. Maybe it's the alcohol. I'm just about done with this one. This is my first. I swear to God. But this conversation, I don't remember it being this funny. What the chicken does a chicken cry? I mean, even the guy before this, I was thinking, is this a paid actor? Because it seems like a very ridiculous conversation. Now this also seems like just a very ridiculous conversation, almost like it's not a real conversation. That is how ridiculous it is. But yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to remember what I said in the first take on this because I had something to say about this one. I think it was on this one that I talked about gender, because they do in this they talk about whether the chicken is female or not. If it lays eggs, if a chicken lays eggs, is it necessarily a female? And that's where I feel like this for me is a non-topic, because if you're talking about females, you're talking about sex, you're not talking about gender. And this is one of those things where I feel like too many arguments are kind of stuck on this, where it's like the argument just gets stuck in this sex and gender are the same thing, but they're not. And I do believe I've already covered this in the very beginning of this video that kind of people already have a basic sense of what gender is, even if they don't know it. Because in, like in America at least, maybe it's the same elsewhere, like you can question a man's manhood, which is to say that, a man might not be a man. If a man, two men are fighting and one man just walks away from the fight, people might say he's not a man. If people read the Bible and look at what Jesus, the way he acted, if someone were today to act like that, just imagine for a second if President Obama had washed the feet of the presidents of other countries, people might say he's not a man, because real men don't do that. So people have already a general sense of gender. But I do believe that I also added that my concept of gender did not come from a gender ideology that was like somebody told me, like this is what gender ideology is. It was my when I first learned about gender, it was in junior high Latin class. That was, as far as I know, that was the only other time that gender came up in anything that I did. It was like in job applications, because it would ask you for your gender and it would say male or female. But already at that age, I already knew that that is a conflation of gender and sex. Because, like I said, I learned about gender from Latin class, because in Latin, the whole language has gender. So if you are familiar with Latin, with Spanish, with French, I believe it's also in Italian, because French, Spanish, and Italian are uh, derived from Latin. And I want to say it was the same with Greek, but I'm not positive about that. I don't know how many other languages do this, but Latin is a gendered language, which means that the nouns they are assigned a gender. So a word like rock or tree or river, or even abstract concepts like liberty. So in Latin, the word for liberty is a feminine noun. If you look up the Latin word, I believe the word is libertas. It is a feminine noun. So that does liberty have a vagina? Does liberty lay eggs? Does liberty give birth? No. So what makes liberty feminine? Why was it assigned the gender of feminine? That's not really the point here. That is more of a rhetorical question, but let's go.
Eggs?
We assume they're female if they lay eggs.
Oh, goodness me. Now, Matt, there was a time when this
Seems
sort of
like a fake
ideology was
conversation.
confined to university campuses, and people thought, oh, well, that's where you debate these sort of radical ideas. But this movement has got enormous, disproportionate power
The
in every
movement?
facet now. You look at not just
What
public institutions,
movement
but
are you
private
talking about?
institutions, a number of corporates that virtue signal about this issue. Can you just help us understand the power of this activist group, such a small group,
What
but
activist group are you talking
disproportionate
about?
influence and power?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we made the movie, really, was for people to understand just how powerful this ideology is, how widespread it is.
What
And one thing I've
ideology are you
heard from
talking
people who watched it
about?
is lots of people have told me, well, I didn't realize how bad it was until I saw the film. And that's not the only thing I want people to take away from the film, but that is one of the things I want them to take away is that this is not just something out on the fringes, or, as you say, just in the universities anymore that we can ignore. It is everywhere. And I think what happened is, it seems like it came out of nowhere 5 or 10 years ago. But it really didn't. It made its way into the institutions, especially academia.
It came out of nowhere 5 or 10 years ago. What is he talking about? What came out of the nowhere 5 or 10 years ago? In the first reaction video, I pointed out that the whole thing of being transgender is not new. That this was something that trans people existed in ancient Rome and ancient Greece. Excuse me. I do believe ancient Mesopotamian culture. There is evidence of priests who were transgender. Excuse me. In Old Norse society, there was evidence of transgender behavior. Skeletons have been dug up, like Viking culture type society. Skeletons were dug up of male bodies that were put to rest in female clothes. Excuse me. So this is not something new. At least the idea of transgender is not new, but I'm still not sure what he's talking about. If it's just the idea that a man is a woman, or a man can be a woman, that I'm a little bit like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe the Romans didn't say that the trans were women. I don't know what they called them. If you read about them in history sources, books, online articles, they're just simply referred to as transgender. So I studied religion, and I did read about like ancient priests from ancient Rome who or priests from ancient Rome who dressed as women, who sometimes used women's names and that sort of thing, and even castrated themselves. But did they say they were women? I don't know. I don't know. So that's what I'm a little bit like. What is he talking about? Is he just talking about the idea of is it just men dressing as women that's he's talking about? Is it just the idea that a man can be a woman that he's talking about? Is that the whole gender ideology that he's talking about? Is it just that one idea that a man can be a woman? I'm not sure. I don't think he is even sure. I think this is just propaganda.
Government, media, it made its way into those institutions over the course of decades. And then from there, I think filtered down into the general population. And then maybe, 8-10 years ago is when it kind of it exploded onto the scene on a mainstream level. And now, you go anywhere, and at least you go anywhere in the Western world, and people are impacted by these ideas, and many people have bought into them without even realizing that they have.
All right, so I may have to go to the bathroom after drinking a whole beer. If you watched that and didn't come to the conclusion that that was propaganda, I'm kind of interested as to why not? Because, like I said, the title is "Gender Ideology is a Pervasive and Toxic Influence." But not at any point in that video did I see or hear an example of the gender ideology that was being talked about. The only thing, I mean, when he was going around asking the question, like, what is a woman? That apparently that was kind of the question, but the notion of what is a woman itself is a gender ideology. If you can define what a woman is, then you have a gender ideology. So it's like, what is the point of all that? The point of it that just seems to be propaganda. It almost seems to be saying to the viewer, stay away from gender conversations. Just don't even talk about it because this is so vague as to what the actual gender ideology is, because it doesn't mention it, doesn't define it, doesn't explain what it is. It almost seems to be saying to the viewer, if you hear someone talking about gender ideas that are not your gender ideas, just fuck it. Just, don't buy into it. That seems to be what it seems to be saying. But that is an interpretation. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next video. This will be an actual genuine reaction. This will be my first time seeing this. So this is going to be what surprised Matt Walsh most when filming What is a Woman? So this, I believe, is the same person.
What is a woman? Can you tell me that?
All right, Matt Walsh, I'm happy to have you here on the.
Should I go to the bathroom? How long has this been? So I've been recording for 54 minutes. Wow. Yeah, I think I might have to go to the bathroom because apparently it took me an hour just to get through what was that, 15-minute video? No, I'll just leave it recording. No. I'm going to stop. All right, so I am back from the bathroom, and I see already that he has the Daily Wire. I don't know if you can see my mouse here over the screen because I'm not sure my mouse shows up in here or not. But I was thinking that he worked for the Daily Wire or something like that. But I wasn't. Here it is there. So I don't know if that means that he works for the Daily Wire or if he is now representing the Daily Wire or what.
The Will Kane podcast. You have traveled the world, asked this question of everyone you've come in contact with, including on social media. Have you found yet the answer, Matt, to the question, what is a woman?
You know, it feels a little bit like a spoiler, but
I have to interrupt because I am going to assume that if someone were to watch this who is already kind of opposed to trans or like the idea of trans or the undefined gender ideology from the previous video, if you're already opposed to that undefined gender ideology and you're just like waiting for me to define what a woman is, that is something for me that I am still trying to answer. And it's not, to say that I identify as a woman is not I don't identify as a woman. I don't say that I identify as a woman because I'm still trying to figure out what my identity is. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I actually just made a video called, I believe it's called the Search for My Real Self is what I called it. So for me, excuse me, this question came up for me because, as I said previously, I did not grow up thinking that I was a girl. I suspected it at times. There were times when I referred to myself as granddaughter instead of grandson, and I thought that was the right word. That I used that word on accident, but it felt like I used the right word. What does this mean? Am I a girl? I thought, well, maybe I am a girl, but there's nothing I can do about it. At that time, so this was back in like late 80s, early 90s, maybe. I'd never heard of trans. But over the course of years, I slowly, very gradually, just came to the idea that I was trans. And once I actually tried putting on a wig, makeup, and women's clothing, and I looked in the mirror and I saw myself as a woman, that's when I thought I am trans. You know, I saw somebody who I felt like was closer to the real me than the man that I saw when I dressed as a man. But then that raised the question for me: if I'm a woman in a man's body, then what is a woman? And that's a question that I really have not been able to answer. The only thing that I know is that I feel better about myself when I look like a woman. Uh, and I do mean the way a woman typically looks. So like wearing clothes like this, putting makeup on, putting on a wig. This is a wig, by the way, if you can't tell. Uh, Things like that make me feel better about myself, which makes me think I must be a woman on the inside. So what does that mean? For me, it just means that for me, I need to live basically a woman's life. That my life, in order for me to be happy, pretending to be a man does not work. Because I'm 46 years old. I had started doing this around 39 or 40. So the 40 years before that, I was basically miserable and felt like life was pointless and that sort of thing. And it slowly, over time, started to become apparent to me that the problem was that I was living as a man, socially as a man, that I was seeing myself as a man in my head, that I was being treated as a man by society, and these sorts of things. That like when men looked at me, they didn't see a woman, they saw a man. And when women looked at me, they didn't see a woman, they saw a man. So I never could have friends because the people I wanted to be friends with didn't see me as a woman because the people I wanted to be friends with were women. The people who I wanted to date didn't want to date me because they didn't see a woman, they saw a man. That sort of thing. So I did date women, and I'm actually still curious as to what it's like to date a woman as a trans woman. But I'm getting a little bit deep here. Let me go back to the video.
I guess I can reveal exclusively that I did find an answer. It turns out that a woman is an adult human female, as it turns out anyway.
I don't want to give any spoilers either, but it turns out, as you point out, you didn't have to travel very far to find that answer. But the point of the documentary, which I thoroughly enjoyed, Matt, I thought it was very good and enlightening and entertaining, is your confrontation, I think, with those who would not or could not answer that question for you. I've watched you talk to psychotherapists, I guess. I don't know what type of doctor works in Planned Parenthood and prescribes puberty blockers. I've seen you now interview sex change doctors in Los Angeles. Why is it they have such trouble answering that question?
Well, I think that question, and by the way, they have trouble answering the question of what is a woman. What I discovered is that they also have trouble answering any other question at all. I mean, any question that you ask, if you're actually being sort of skeptical and you're asking a question because you want an answer, which is how questions are supposed to work, any question like that, they really have trouble answering. What is a woman in particular? I think it's because they know that their ideology has sort of backed them into a corner where there's no answer to the question that won't destroy the whole edifice that they've constructed here. Because obviously, you can just look at the fact that a man says, "I identify as a woman," and we're supposed to affirm him.
What edifice is he talking about? What edifice? Is it, apparently it's based on the claim that a man can identify as a woman and that makes him a woman. So apparently there's an edifice built on top of that foundation. What is that edifice? I don't know. Is it now you're going to go back to the children taking puberty blockers? If that's the case, what does that have to do with gender ideology? What about an adult? Is he okay with an adult taking hormones? Is he okay with me taking hormones? Is he okay with me having breasts? I mean, what is? Yeah. I do like better doing these the first time. Watching the video again the second time, this does actually, it makes it less enjoyable to do as a reaction.
Right? as a woman, but then you ask, well, what exactly is that? What is a woman? And there's no definition that can be given that is coherent and objective, but also preserves gender ideology. And if you
I want to add that the definition of woman is different in different societies. And when I say definition, I mean basically that the social expectations of women. So I talked about earlier, the social expectations of men. For example, I think I mentioned it that if Joe Biden were witnessed sucking Putin's dick, his manhood would be called into question. But as for women, there are certain social expectations associated with being women. For example, if a woman is not married and does not have children, people make the assumption that there's something wrong with her, because people have this idea that that is what a woman does. That's the social expectation of what a woman is supposed to do. So it's like if you have a vagina but you don't have kids, then you are somehow transgressed your role, which means that what? What does that mean? That being a woman is more than just having a vagina, but it is also a role, right? Like being a wife is a role, being a mother is a role, things like that. Uh, and that is some of that is different depending on where you go. For example, in ancient China, it was the women who ruled the household, or in a lot of ancient societies, it was the women who ran the household, not the men. But in America, of course, it's kind of the social norm that men run the household. So there is more to being a woman than just having a vagina, and I don't mean to say that means a man can then identify as a woman, but I just mean that if you're born with a vagina, then certain things are expected of you, or you are treated a certain way just because by virtue of the fact that you have a vagina, which basically means that what is associated with being a woman is there are things associated with being a woman that also contribute to what you might call your identity. Uh, uh, because even cis people have their own sense of identity. So Matt Walsh has his sense of identity. He is dressed as a man currently. Why is Matt Walsh dressed as a man? Why is he wearing a man's dress shirt? Is it because he thinks that's what he's supposed to do? Did he go to the clothing store when he went shopping for his clothes? That he looked through all of the clothes in the clothing store and determined that that shirt that he's wearing is the best shirt for him to buy? Did he look at the shirts in the women's racks and thinks, I don't really like any of these? Or did he just skip over those and go straight to the men's section and pick out that shirt? If he skipped over all the women's clothes, then we can assume that he has some idea that in his head that I'm a man, I have to wear men's clothes, which is based on what? If he were a newborn child who knew nothing about what men's or women's social expectations, and he went into a clothing store to find clothes to wear, would he just go to the men's section, or would he just go to the entire store? Did that make any sense?
can't give the definition, then what does the statement even mean that I identify as a woman? And you end up in this kind of circular, contradictory cycle.
There's a moment, Matt, when you're talking to the subjects, and it's not really exclusively in your documentary. I saw the same moment when you were on Dr. Phil. There's a moment when you ask that question, and you sort of you now being the proverbial you, search the eyes of the person that you've asked that question of. And I don't know, and I'm not trying to project or I'm not trying to dunk on someone, but it does seem there is a moment of fear. And maybe that fear is what you just described. Maybe it's the realization I've just been undone. But I'm curious, do you think what you're encountering in that fleeting second, and by the way, it may be more in the documentary because it is edited. They may be sitting there for minutes pondering the answer to that question. But if it is fear that I'm seeing, I'm curious. Do you think they have never considered that question before?
I think actually, yeah, a lot of them. And one interesting thing you have to keep in mind when you're watching the documentary is that we were filming that over the course, a lot of the filming happened, we started filming about a year ago, and we filmed for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months. But all of the filming was done, most of it was done before my Dr. Phil appearance, and all of it was done before the infamous moment with Ketanji Brown Jackson when that question was asked on like the biggest stage imaginable, which means that for most of these interviews, this question was not really out there kind of in the mainstream. And so, yeah, the people I'm talking to hadn't really been confronted with it yet. And a lot of them, I think there was a moment where they stopped and at first they're like, well, what are you asking me that for? And then there's this moment of, oh, yeah, I can't answer that, can I? And then that's when the evasion begins, this kind of like a dance of trying to avoid the question, which is pretty interesting.
Can I ask you, I want to ask you about some of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. I want to talk more about the philosophy of gender ideology.
Yes, please!
Which is the important part of this conversation. But as someone who also creates content for a living and does so both live and on tape, I'm really fascinated by both how you booked these interviews and what happens during the interview. I heard during your interview with the gender theory professor, and I can't remember what school or university where he taught, but I remember during that interview he said to you, oh, I saw that on the list of questions that you submitted, and I was excited to answer that question. What was did these people know who you were, Matt? Did they come in expecting some level, I don't even want to call it hostility, but of accountability? What were the expectations going into the interviews?
Well, they knew the kind of broad subject matter we'd be talking about, and as you heard there in the interview, there was several of our interview subjects who asked to see just kind of a basic outline of the questions. Obviously, there were going to be follow-up questions and stuff like that, but just kind of basic outline, and we were happy to send them, and we did. I think that maybe one advantage that we had was that, I don't think that any of the I don't think any of the interview subjects we sat down with recognized me or had any idea really who I was. And that again goes back to when we're filming this, starting a year ago, and this was before, appearing on Dr. Phil. I kind of raised my profile a little bit in this film, and this is before all of that. So yeah, there was no, as far as I could tell, there was no real recognition or anything like that. The interesting thing you mentioned, like sending the questions ahead of time, is that there were instances where people were getting kind of tripped up on questions that they knew were going to be asked, and yet we're still kind of tripped up on, which I can't explain that exactly. I find it very fascinating.
What happened during the interviews? For what it's worth, Matt, after you and I spent some time together at the Blaze some 8 to 10 years ago, I spent 5 years at ESPN. And let me tell you one of the great things that ESPN did. They required every on-air talent to take an interviewing course.
Should I stop looking at myself on the camera?
It was something that I would recommend any media organization to put their talent through this course. You learn things like ask, for example, open, benign questions. Don't lead the witness. Don't put them in a position where they can evade an answer by asking them a double-barreled question. Then they can pick and choose what answer they want to go with. Don't give them yes or no type questions. And you asked, especially with this particular question, what is a woman, an open, benign question. And it's amazing what that does to an interviewee. It really often, and not just with this question, spins people out of control. And I'm curious what happened during the interview, because most...
So what they seem to be harping on here is that people who subscribe to the gender ideology that we've already seen Matt call toxic and pervasive, that they can't answer the question of what is a woman. And I don't really know like why you would expect them to be able to, because like I said before, even for myself, if I say that I'm a woman on the inside, uh, that does beg the question, then what is a woman? But assume just for a second that idea is true, that I am a woman on the inside. Uh, just assume that it's true. What is a woman then? What are you talking about? And now I could rephrase that to say that assume for a second that I have a woman's brain. Uh, just that could be another way to put it. Just assume for a second that I have a woman's brain and but a male's body, and that what does that what does that then imply? What does that mean? What does that mean for my life? Does that mean that I want to be a wife and not a husband? Does it mean I want to be a mother and not a father? Does it mean that I like pretty clothes and I want to be pretty myself and I want to be the object of desire who is pursued, not the one who pursues? That I want to be submissive and subservient, these sorts of things. These are what I just listed there, or these might be the what it would mean to be a woman if a woman were just a brain, if a woman were just a like how do I perceive the world? If you were to ask the question, what is the world? Is the world through a woman's eyes different than it is through a man's eyes? If you think the answer to that is yes, do you believe that if a woman when a woman looks at the world that she sees it the same way that a man does? If you believe it's the same, then you're saying basically that men and women are the same on the inside, but they only differ in their genitalia. That men and women are basically the same thing, they just have different biologies, which is not what people mean when they say that women are from Venus and men are from Mars. When people say that, what do they mean? They mean that they're basically different people, that that women have different attitudes, they have different propensities, things like that. And so for someone to say that they are a woman, they like for a man to say that he is a woman, he is saying what? I have a woman's attitude, a woman's propensities. I would rather be a wife than a husband, a mother than a father, things like that. It's not just about the vagina and the penis. Uh, in that case, uh, because I believe most people would agree that the desires of a woman are not the same as the desires of a man. Like when a woman looks at her life and thinks, what do I want for my life? I think most people would agree that what she wants is not the same as what a man wants, because if it were, then women would not marry men, they would marry other women. And they would drive fancy sports cars and try to be rich and try to be powerful and all these other sorts of things so that they could get women who were also trying to be rich and powerful and all these other things, which would be kind of counterproductive. But what women want is not the same as what men want. Generally speaking. So there you have. This is where I'm like, there is more to being a woman than just having a vagina. So if I in 5 years from now, meet a man and I think this guy's going to be my husband, and I want to be his bride. Uh, my desire is to be his bride. I don't want to be his husband. I want to play that role of being his bride. Then I'm not going to say that that makes me a woman, but that is, you might say, that is a woman's desire. That is why I said that. Pretend for a second that I have a woman's brain, because desire. Where does desire come from? Does a woman's desire come from her vagina, or does it come from her brain? Does it come from somewhere else? Okay. What was I?
Most of the questions I saw during the documentary were
I'm
in
not
that
liking this
spirit,
video, by the way.
open
This is
and
very.
benign, not a harsh cross-examination, not argumentative, not a debate.
I feel like it's just not getting to the point. I feel like they're just kind of just like harping on the issue that people can't answer the question instead of kind of moving on from that point. That's why I'm kind of like, it's like they're just running circles around this idea that no one can define what a woman is.
At least what was in the documentary, at least what made the cut. So I'm curious what happened during the interview. I know during one of them, the congressman cut the interview short, but how did most of the interviewees react?
I think that things got.
How did they react?
Actually, pretty tense.
How did they
Early
feel?
on in the interviews? Just on the strength of exactly what you're talking about, these kind of open, what would seem like rather benign questions, and that's another thing that I wasn't quite expecting. Now, I knew that the question, "What is a woman?" is a real stumper for people that are proponents of gender ideology, and so I was expecting, that they'd be stumped on that. But what I found is that really much earlier than that, if you just ask basic questions. I think it's more. In fact, in one of the interviews, I think it was the professor.
Just ask
said
basic
something about,
questions.
well, your
Just
tone,
ask basic
He
questions.
was disturbed by my tone in the interview.
I'm
Even
disturbed
my
by your
tone
tone
was,
of
I think,
voice.
very, baseline kind of just neutral. But it was clear that I was it's a real question. I actually want an answer out of you, and I don't want just like a talking point.
Oh,
And
you
I think
don't?
that's what threw them for a loop. But I also found the questions are important, but also, silence is very powerful. Just like let them give an answer. Ask your question, they give an answer, and don't say anything at first. Because then they'll kind of keep talking, and that's what I really want. I don't want the first sentence that you give me, because that's the talking point, right? I want give me some more. Let's flesh this out a little bit, and that's when I found things kind of spin off the rails a little bit, or in a follow up question. I mean, the answer to what is a woman that we got from pretty much everybody, some version of it was always, well, a woman is anyone who identifies as a woman, and they kind of want to leave it at that. But then the follow up is, well, identifies as what? What is that thing that they're identifying as? What does that mean? And once you start bearing down a little bit more and trying to get, actually get to the substance of this, that's when I think it all kind of falls apart.
Well, you're absolutely right about silence, by the way. I think they teach that in negotiation. Forget political debate. If you're negotiating over the price of a car, silence is incredibly powerful. People are so uncomfortable with it that they begin to fill silence. And you get more. You get more from your interview. And I know I can almost hear you asking yourself how much to give for the sake of spoilers. I'll just say everyone listening should absolutely go watch What is a Woman. It is entertaining, it is enlightening. So I'll let you still kind of balance and weigh that debate when I ask you this, but the congressman, Tanaka, walked out. Did anyone else in the interview early? I saw the professor threaten to. Did anyone else in the conversation?
Is this just him advertising his documentary? Is that all it is? I'm guessing somebody watching this will be like, "Yeah, you go get him, Matt Walsh. They can't answer the question." How could I put the question another way? How could I put the question another way? If you were to take the brain out of a woman, someone born with a vagina, and put that same brain in a man's body, would the man, so you take the man's brain out of his body, you put a woman's brain in its place, would the man act differently? Yes or no? That's my question.
Conversation prematurely?
The professor did end up at a certain point. He got up and just had enough of it. But we had got to the final question of what is a woman. So at that point, we got to the final question. The congressman was the only one that skipped out of there before we could even get to the final question, which is why I had to ask it as he was walking out. And we got that great answer from his aide, who was standing over my shoulder the whole time, by the way, who said you're never going to find out, which I just thought was a fantastic answer. And then we talked to a so-called gender-affirming pediatrician who also threatened to walk out but didn't. And that's the other thing I discovered. It's kind of like this psychological thing too, where people are really uncomfortable leaving situations. Like they don't want to get up and leave. And so you got to use that to your advantage also. I mean, I'm not stopping anyone from leaving. You're perfectly fine to leave, but you don't want to, so I'm just going to keep asking questions. And that's the way it went.
I appreciate you entertaining that because, look, I think we're all sort of attracted to the train wreck of an uncomfortable moment. And there are plenty of uncomfortable moments that sit and weigh heavily for the audience and for, you would presume, you two in the room. So I wanted to see how that played out in real life. Listen, you have made this really, I think, this is probably, I would assume, Matt Walsh's number one issue, at least for the moment. You've written, as you point out, a best-selling children's book about gender ideology. You've now made this documentary. It's certainly, I think, probably the majority of the things now on your social media feed. Why do you find gender ideology such an important topic?
Because he's trans.
Because there's a few things. One is that it's almost like I didn't really choose it. I think the left and the cultural powers that be, the institutions, have chosen this as their top priority.
Is it safe to assume that Matt Walsh is trans? I mean, would anybody but a trans person in denial go through such lengths to disprove the transgender ideology? Why would somebody be so concerned with disproving the transgender ideology if they were not a trans person themselves who could not accept it? It's just a question. I don't actually think he's trans. I think he might be gay. That's why he wears a beard. Do you know what a beard is in homosexual jargon? A beard in homosexual jargon is something that a man does to hide the fact that he's gay. Yeah, I know that happens. I know it happens. When you get to be too transphobic, people just assume you're trans, and that's because the science backs that up. Science says that if you are a man who outwardly expresses your hatred for gays, that your chances are you're actually a gay person who is in denial. That is the scientific conclusion. So if someone is going to extremes, then this guy is willing to sit on this talk show and just talk about how people could not define what a woman is. Does that mean he's probably trans himself? Who would go through such extremes? If you ask him why he's doing it, he'll probably say something like, "Oh, the children. It's the children. They're castrating the young boys, and the young girls who are 12 years old are getting fake penises." Anyways, let's get through this.
Culturally, anyway, their number one project. So in some sense, it's I don't even look at it like I chose. It's sort of they did. But why is it so important?
You chose this, Matt Walsh. You chose this.
It cuts down to
you chose it.
The basic question of truth. It's like,
the
are we going to have a society that's grounded in truth? Are we going to be people that have any concept of truth or not? I don't think you can have a human civilization devoid of truth. And
who is Matt Walsh?
These interviews is that almost every single one of them, at some point, including the just average people on the street we talk.
Instead of asking what is a woman, we should ask who is Matt Walsh? What is Matt Walsh? Is Matt Walsh a man? Someone should ask him that. Say, are you a man? Prove it. If he says, well, I have a penis, I'd say, no, it doesn't prove you're a man.
Talk to. At some point, it devolves into this whole, well, what is truth? Whose truth are we talking about? Those kinds of questions. Because you find that underneath the gender ideology, what they're actually interested in preserving and promoting is this kind of relativistic notion of we all have our own truth. Relativism in general. That's the real motivation, I think.
That's what I want.
And that's why I think it's so important to them, to the other side, is because, hey, if we can establish that even my biological identity is sort of up to me, like I'm this self-created being, and I get to decide everything about my own identity, well, then I really do have my own universe, my own truth, and I'm sort of the god of my own galaxy, in a way. And it seems to me that that's what they're ultimately shooting for.
For what it's worth, I mean, I share your sentiment that this issue is one of the most important that we face, if not the most important, one of the most important.
That's what who's shooting for.
And the reason why is exactly what you.
Who is shooting for this? Am I shooting for this? Am I hoping for a universe where I can make truth whatever I want it? I'm kind of like that already. I think most people are like that already. Most people are kind of just like, yeah, I own the truth. I'm right. You're wrong. Matt Walsh, I believe you are like that also. So, what relativistic truth am I interested in? Is me wearing women's clothes, are you making the prejudiced assumption that me wearing women's clothes means that I am just interested in relativistic truth? What is that? Is it just people who claim to be women? If I said, well, I'm not a woman, I'm just trans, what then is your argument? I'm not a woman, Matt Walsh, I'm a trans woman. Argue against that.
Just laid out. It is a question of whether or not we are going to recognize reality, an objective reality, or we're going to live in a world of subjectivism. And everybody, as you point out, gets to define their truth. That's one of the interactions you have in the documentary. What is your truth? There is no my truth. There is only a truth. That's a conversation you have in there. You just said something fascinating. You think that in the end is at the top of the agenda. Gender ideology is just a pathway into denying truth and reality. But you said it, and look, I say it too. Sometimes you said the left, right? Or we use the pronoun they in this case, the generic pronoun they, and we talk about whoever it is driving this agenda, the left.
Am I the left? How did that happen? How did I get to be on the left? Somebody ask my friends, am I a Trump supporter or am I a Biden supporter? Ask my friends. Don't ask me that question. Ask my friends. Just go to my friends list on Facebook and say, who does this person support? I know who Matt Walsh is because I was a subscriber to the Daily Wire. So to say this is a leftist ideology or this is a leftist idea that somehow being trans is somehow a leftist thing. That's just fucking stupid. Trannies for Trump.
Elite politicians, elite cultural tastemakers. I'm curious, though, how much of this you think is driven from a top-down agenda versus how much is sort of embraced from an atomistic, chaotic, ground-up level? Because when you describe the value of subjectivism in my personal reality, I can see how, as a culture, we start adopting that from the ground up because everybody wants to believe they're right and nobody can ever tell them they're wrong, and it's my truth and my reality. But how does that aid the left? How does it aid the left for every single person out there to live in a subjective reality?
Well, I'll start with the first part of the question. I think that it's really, at least in its origins, top down. That's where this starts, and it still is. I mean, as I mentioned, the people we talked to on the street, yeah, there was a lot of apparent confusion, like asking these basic questions of average people. They would also evade and kind of dance around it, but it was pretty clear to me. And oftentimes there are a lot of people who aren't in the film because they told me that I just can't talk about this issue on camera because it'll mean that I'll lose my job and I'll lose my friends and all this kind of stuff. It was really clear to me that most of the people that we're encountering, they know the basic reality, but they're just afraid to talk about it. There's so much fear. And why are they afraid? It's because that comes from the institutions. That comes from up top. I mean, we talk about in the film the origins of some of these ideas. There are some kind of landmark moments you can look to, and also some pioneers of these things. We talk about John Money and Alfred Kinsey being two of the big ones. And that was back in the mid-20th century, right? And it seems to a lot of people, though, that the gender ideology thing really came along like 5 years ago. And that's why people talk about it like it just sprang out of the blue. And I think what really happened is that it kind of was bubbling under the surface.
This is the second time he said that. It came around five years ago out of the blue. What is he talking about? What gender ideology came around 5 years ago? Is it I, is he saying that men didn't dress as women until 5 years ago? Or is he saying that prior to 5 years ago, men dressed as women, but they didn't call themselves women? They called themselves men who dressed as women or cross-dressers. What I don't understand what he's talking about here. Somebody help me! Help!
It was
Help!
making its way
Help!
into society through the
Help
institutions,
me!
especially like
Help
academia,
me!
and then
Help
kind
me!
of filtering down from there until kind of the groundwork was laid, and then it could kind of explode into the mainstream. But I do think this is a top-down move for the most part.
And by the way, I want to follow up on that question in just one moment, but since you introduced it, I found the historical origins of much of this, the focus on Kinsey and is it Money, John Money? I found that
Money,
fascinating. Lay that out to the extent that you can without, doing the documentary on a podcast. Lay that out if you wouldn't mind. Most people have heard of Kinsey. They probably haven't heard of Money. They've heard of Kinsey because I think Hollywood turned it into a movie and he's just sort of seeped into popular culture. How did those two individuals advance this to where we are today?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, people have heard of Kinsey through Hollywood, but the thing is, if you've heard of Kinsey through Hollywood, then you haven't really heard of Kinsey because that's not like the reality of Kinsey, who was really just a monstrous person and a fraud and just a quack. And his real thing, his goal was to sexualize children. I mean, he believed that children were sexual literally from birth, and that's why we talk about an infamous study that he did, if we can even call it that, where he documented the orgasms of young children down to like 5 months old, and he used sex offenders, child molesters, child rapists for this kind of quote unquote research. But this was his effort to kind of make it clear that we are inherently sexual beings from birth. And then you have Kinsey, okay, you have him there, and then we have John Money, who now we're going over into the gender side of it, and he was one of the first people to come up with this idea that gender is something that people have, and people don't realize that before guys like Money, nobody talked about gender among people. People had a sex, male or female, man or woman, and gender was linguistic. Like words had gender. You have masculine and feminine words. Money was among the first to say, no, people have a gender and a sex, and he coined terms like gender identity. I think sexual orientation is a term that he coined as well. And he came up with this idea that gender is fluid, it's socially constructed. And we talk about it in the film. There's a whole story about how he kind of tried this theory out on two young boys, one of whom was quote, transitioned at the age of 2 after a botched circumcision, convinced the parents to raise the child as a girl. Because, hey, it's socially constructed. As long as you affirm him as a girl, then he'll be a girl. That's not how it turned out. Both the kids end up going on as adults to kill themselves. They were totally ruined by this being John Money's lab rats. But that's where these ideas came from. And, you know, from Alfred Kinsey, you have kind of the comprehensive sexual education that goes into the schools.
What ideas?
And, you know, you got to start teaching kids at like kindergarten or pre-K about this stuff. That comes from Alfred Kinsey. And then from John Money, we have...
I think Matt Walsh might be a top-down implant. Apparently these are not his ideas. He was getting these from somebody else, somebody higher than him, who said, we don't like this gender ideology stuff, go out there and make a documentary. He's like, okay, yeah, I'll do it, because it's just a pawn. This anti-trans movement is really a political movement, and he, you know, probably the owner of Fox News. Who's that? Rupert Murdoch. Probably paid him like $1 million or something like that just to go on this one show here, and another $1 million to make his documentary "What Is a Woman," because you know it's some people don't like trans. So I'm gonna go to the bathroom while I listen to this video.
Gender is fluid, and everything that we hear
I'm
about.
gonna listen to this. I'll be right back.
When you hear people on the left say really anything about gender or in defense of sex ed in schools, they are parroting ideas from those two guys, even if they don't know it. And I think a lot of them actually don't know it.
And that of course gives evidence to the idea of what you said a moment ago, that it's driven from the top down. I'm curious, Matt, you've done this documentary, and you see, I mean, you know, I would say your documentary lands at a fortuitous time because the news cycle is focused on Pride Month, but I'm sure some of that was calculated. And the other thing is the news cycle continuously gives you fodder for it to be meaningful in that week. This week, we've got the Drag Your Kids to Pride event here in my town of Dallas. We got drag queens bumping and grinding and kids feeding $1 bills into their thongs in front of a neon sign that says it's not going to lick itself. And I'm just curious, when you see all of this stuff, Matt, like, where's it going? What's next? You have the historical context. You know where it started in the 60s and the 50s with Kinsey. Where are we 10 years from now?
I think for the advocates of this stuff, what their goal is it's really the total destruction of, we talked about the destruction of objective reality, also any concept of kind of traditional morality, the parental, the parent-child relationship, the nuclear family. I mean, all these things they want to blow apart, blow to smithereens. And what we find on the left is that when you challenge them on these things, they just double down and become more radical. I mean, now you have Democrats and liberals actually coming out explicitly in defense of child drag shows. I just saw on Twitter, there's a state senator in California who came out just openly advocating for child drag shows. That's the kind of thing that 10 years ago would be unthinkable, even among Democrats.
Right.
So I don't think there's any kind of stopping the dissent for them. The question is on the other side, the people that
What I want to know is who watches this and thinks this is actual. Like, I mean, who watches this and is like, he's actually making sense? Like, who thinks that? Uh, this is about like Alex Jones type conspiracy theory type stuff. This is uh, I want to destroy the nuclear family because I want to put on a wig and makeup. That doesn't make any sense. Uh, I'm trying to destroy objective reality because I want to put on a wig and makeup and women's clothing. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, for one, who determined that this was a woman's shirt? Like I bought this at Goodwill today in the women's section, but who determined that this was a woman's shirt? Is that objective reality? Is it objective reality that this is a woman's shirt? Who determined that? How did this shirt end up in the women's section at Goodwill? Who made that decision? Did somebody at Goodwill make that decision? On what did they base that decision to put this shirt in the women's section? This was a donation. Somebody donated this shirt to Goodwill. Goodwill looked at it. Somebody at Goodwill looked at the shirt and said, "We'll put this in the women's section." But why? Why did they put this shirt in the women's section? Uh, is that objective reality? Were the people at Goodwill like looking up a book or some book somewhere in the universal uh, uh, spatial uh, thing here, where there's like a Google where we can look up and say, is this shirt a man's shirt or a woman's shirt? And the universe responded and said, that is a woman's shirt. It's objective reality. That is a woman's shirt. Put it in the woman's section. How did they come to that conclusion? It deserves a documentary. That question deserves a documentary. I believe. Matt Walsh should make a documentary about how this shirt ended up in the women's section at Goodwill.
Oppose this, are we going to get to a point where a line is finally drawn? I think there's some evidence that maybe we're reaching that point. I hope we are.
Well, maybe, but the inertia of
I like the
progressivism
light.
within culture is really in fifth gear right now. I mean, as you pointed out, like 10 years ago, everybody on the left, almost everybody on the left, would have condemned a child drag show. So I just have to wonder, 5 years from now, maybe 10 years from now, where are we? You know, you asked the question in the documentary of one subject that said, what if I said I'm black? So are we going to be in a place where there's such thing as, and I know there still is on the margins, but in popular acceptance, is there going to be transracialism?
When I hear that, when I hear a guy ask a question like that, well, if I say I'm black, does that mean I'm black? My automatic assumption is this guy is trans. This guy does not like the idea that his desires, his libido, his ultimate motivations in life might be the same as a woman's. Because I think most people, when they hear the idea of trans, I think most people know that's what that means. It doesn't mean that you just identify as a woman. There's more to identifying as a woman than just saying I am a woman, right? Because what is your identity? If I say my identity is woman, it's not just like saying, well, I'm a mouse. Because that's not true. Where in my life did I ever identify with a mouse? Right? I could say that. I can say I identify with a mouse, but that doesn't mean I actually identify with a mouse. Because what does a mouse do that I do? Right? The mouse, I move the mouse around, I use it to point at things on my computer. There's nothing in my life where I do that. I don't point at things for people, or I'm not moved around by people to point at things. So how would I identify as a mouse? I could say I identify as a teacher. That, to some degree, is true. I do identify as a teacher because I teach people things. Using Facebook, I write things on Facebook, which I sometimes, if I learn something, I'll write a post about it on Facebook. That makes me a teacher. Does it not? What else? uh, what else? What else? What else? What else? I could say that I identify as a Latino. That's not really true because how would I identify as a Latino if I spoke Spanish? Does that have anything to do with excuse me, with identifying as a Latino? That has part to do with it. There are. I don't. This may not be a tangent. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but this may not be a tangent. But if you're talking about identity, right? So if I'm talking about the identity of a Latino person, and I say, well, speaking Spanish is part of the identity as a Latino person. If you are a Latino but you don't speak Spanish, let's say you're a Latino and you grew up in America, uh, having never heard Spanish, you only speak English. Would you then identify as a Latino, or would you identify as an American? You might say, "Well, I'm a Latino because my parents were uh, from Guatemala and El Salvador." I've never been there, but for me, it's like in my own life, my ancestors were from Norway. Do I identify as a Norwegian? No. Why would I identify as a Norwegian? I don't speak the Norwegian language. Uh, I don't worship the Norwegian gods. Let's see. What else? What else? I mean, I'm going back to the Latino thing. What else might a Latino hold on to as part of their identification? Uh, well, is a person from Spain a Latino, or is it just people from South America and Central America who are considered Latino? I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know the answer to that. That's number three. Uh, no, I could say that I identify as an American. And by what right do I identify as an American? Is it just being born here? If I'm born in America, do I get to then identify as an American? There was a painter, John Singer Sargent. He's one of the great painters of the last century? John Singer Sargent was born in America, but then moved to Europe at a young age. He was basically, I don't want to say he was raised in Europe, but people debate on whether he is an American painter or a European painter. He was born in America, but so what is he? Is he an American painter just because he was born here? This might seem like a trivial question, like I'm just like splitting hairs, but what I'm talking about here is identity. who, how do you, what is your identity? Your identity, what is your identity? Like if I were, it, Matt Walsh asks the question, what is a woman? But he never asks the question, what is identity? What does that even mean? What is your identity? What is that? What is that? Alice in Wonderland, where the cat asked the question, "Who are you?" I believe he asked that to Alice. The cat, the Mad Hatter cat, says, "Who are you?" And how, like, if you were to answer that question, "Who are you?" Uh, by what would you answer that question? Would you say, "Well, I'm American. I'm white. I am male. I am Trump supporter. I am 46 years old. I am a witch. I am trans. I am intelligent. I am. What is that? Is that all? Is that me? Is all that me? I mean, I went through, what was that? Was that 9 things I went through? Nine categories. Are those 9 categories me? Is any one of those categories me? Who am I? 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 I don't know. Am I a musician? I told a friend of mine that I'm an artist, and my friend said, "No, you're not an artist because you've never sold any art."
Is there going to be, and again, I know there still are people out there, and you bring it up again in the documentary, where we're going to say, well, he believes he's disabled. So there's going to be a sizable contingent of people. More importantly, there's going to be a sizable contingent of apologists who say, yeah, you should cut off that person's arm because he believes he's disabled. We can keep going. Transracialism, furries or whatever, people believing they're pets. And again, you brought this up. I'm just curious, do you think that's going... We're in fifth gear. And look, the inevitable one that everyone talks about is pedophilia. Are we moving to a place... And look, we're already sexualizing kids because I don't consider this in the smallest bit conspiratorial. We're clearly sexualizing kids. So which of these, go through them one by one, which of these do you think we will, as a culture, be apologizing for within 5 years?
It would be a lot easier to talk about the one that we won't be, because I think all the rest of it we will. The one that we're kind of skipping, I think, is the transracialism thing. I think that will...
Where did this come from? I missed the part. I missed something here. Their transracialism got somehow equated with transgenderism. Now pedophilia is somehow a inevitable byproduct of being transgender. What? Where? Who? How did this happen?
Even though that of all these various ideas, being transracial is actually the least crazy, because actually you can be mixed race and those sorts of things. So race is fluid in a sense in that way. So that's the least crazy version. That's the one we're not going to do. And that's just because it totally ruins. It just doesn't work with the intersectionality politics on the left. And so they're going to skip that one. But all the rest of it, yeah, I think we're going to see, here's what I would say the next 5 to 10 years. I think a big thing, and we're seeing this now already, but increasingly being, quote, genderless is going to be a big thing in 5 to 10 years. There are surgeons now who will do so-called gender nullification surgeries, where they just obliterate any semblance of sex. They'll just get rid of your sex organs and try to turn you into this kind of genderless alien sort of creature. I think that's going to become increasingly popular. I think this proliferation of like made-up pronouns, Z and Zer and Zem, that is more and more popular, especially among the younger kids on TikTok and everything. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. Trans species, you talk about furries. This is already starting to bubble up and become more of a trend among young kids. So I think all of that is absolutely on the table. And the final kind of acceptance and defense of pedophilia, of sexual abuse of children, I think is also, we're basically already there with the child drag show stuff. It's just a matter of how explicit and open are they going to be about it. And I think eventually, and not too long from now, we're gonna get there.
I asked that question on Twitter this week, like, what is our line? As individuals, as parents, and as a culture, once you have your child stuffing dollar bills into a stripper's, and I honestly don't care if it's a female stripper or a drag stripper, once you have your 8-year-old stuffing dollar bills into a stripper's thong, you really have to ask yourself and look in the mirror, what is my line? Like, when will I stop? And I look at the parents at that kind of thing, and I think, I don't think there is one.
This video is pretty much the same thing as the last video. I still have not heard any gender ideology. I've basically heard associations, guilt by association. So we're talking about drag shows for children, as though that somehow had something to do with me wearing a wig, makeup, and women's clothes. That, to me, is either a sign of denial. These guys are in denial because they just don't want to admit to something like this. They don't want to look at something like this and think that there is some I see this in my own family, where my own family just does not want to see this, like what I'm doing, as an actual path to happiness. And it seems like that's what's going on here, where these guys are just like, this can't be a path to happiness because child drag shows, this can't be real, this can't be good. Child drag shows. What was the other one? Pedophilia. Well, they're all going to be pedophiles, and they're going to make porn videos of the pedophilic acts because the man dressing as a woman, it's not real. It's not real. It doesn't make a man happy to dress as a woman. It doesn't cure nothing. I like big butts. I like big butts and big boobs. I like big butts and big boobs. I like women. I like women. Cause women they're pretty. They're beautiful. Oh my God, I like women. Oh my God, I want to marry a woman and have kids. Yeah. I want to have kids and marry a woman because women are beautiful. They are beautiful. We all agree. They are beautiful. Yeah. They're beautiful. They're beautiful women, and we're gonna marry the women and have kids, and we're gonna wear beards. We're gonna wear beards because we're real men. We're real men. We're real men. Because you know, it's like that's what it says in the Bible. Yeah, the real men wear beards. Real men wear beards. It's what it says in the Bible. Real men wear beards, and they marry women and have kids. Yeah. Woo. Ah, 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 woo. Ah, 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 woo, woo. Woo, oh my God. I'm a real man. I'm a real man. I'm a real man. Yeah. This is all just crazy shit. This is all just crazy leftist, leftist communists. It's all the communists. They're trying to take over our country and destroy the nuclear family. Oh my God. Let me get a sip of beer here. Yeah. Oh. Oh. I feel better. I feel better. I feel better already. I feel better. Ooh, look at this pen. Look at this pen. Do you know who crafted this pen? You know who crafted that pen? That was made by Wacom Tablets. The people who make the Wacom tablet. I have a Wacom tablet right here, and I use it to paint paintings. And they're beautiful paintings. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Yes, beautiful. Oh, yes. Oh, now I'm at home. Now I'm at home. What am I doing here? How did I get here? How did I get here? What's going on? What is going on? Is this a joke? Am I did you see that? Am I trans? Am I a woman? Why do I feel so much more relaxed all of a sudden? It's like I stepped into a new world. I'm like, oh, oh, I could just fall asleep right here. No, it can't be right. That can't be right. The pedophiles, the pedophiles, the pedophiles. That's what it was. I remember now. It's the pedophiles. It's the pedophiles. And the children drag shows. The children drag shows. That's what it was. I almost forgot. I almost forgot. It's the children drag shows and the pedophiles. And it's the top down, top down. Yeah, yes, top down. Because nobody in their right mind would come to the conclusion that they're trans. Nobody in their right mind would come to that conclusion. Because it doesn't make any sense. Because what is a woman? Who knows what a woman is? It's not me. Oh my God. Oh my God. This is so much fun. I love acting like this. I love it. I love it. I just want to suck on this pen. Oh, what happened? Am I drunk? This is beer number 3. Beer number 3. Still reserved 211. Potent stuff. Do we even need to finish this video? Would you murder me if I just said, fuck this video, this is stupid? Uh, alright, I get you, I get you.
Matt, at this point, it's clear. Like, if they can arrive at the place that this is a way to show your own virtue and achieve popular acceptance, then there's just too many of us who will go along and not tolerate, but encourage.
I think with the drag thing in particular, I mean, the interesting thing is to think of it this way. I mean, drag it's a form of burlesque performance. That's what it is. It's burlesque for men who are cross-dressing. Well, okay, let's just imagine for a second, keep everything the same, and let's just imagine that the men who are dressed as women actually are women. So these are female burlesque performers, like what you would find in Las Vegas or something. And there were kids involved giving dollar bills out. everybody would agree that's wildly inappropriate. Of course, you don't involve kids in that. And yet, if you make the performers male, all of a sudden it's okay. It just doesn't make any sense at all. But I guess that's kind of the theme that we come back to. It's just what they're saying doesn't make any sense.
Well, what's the handrail of sanity? Like, what do you grab to? What insulates the American culture?
I don't know if there's anything that insulates us. I think that we can talk about insulating. One thing that we can do to try to rescue our kids and eventually society is to try to insulate our kids more than we are from a lot of this stuff. And some of that means like, hey, maybe don't give your 10-year-old daughter or son a phone with unlimited, unregulated internet access where they could be exposed to all this stuff and there's no way for you to control it. But I do think broadly for like society, I even though, as you say, we're in fifth gear and the momentum isn't on our side right now, I do think that long term, this is a winnable battle, gender ideology in particular, because as we discovered while we were doing the film, it just wilts away and falls apart under the slightest scrutiny. And the only way that it continues to have this kind of dominance is that the people who know better refuse to say anything and refuse to ask the question. So we just have to get the normal, sane, rational people. I don't care if you call yourself conservative or not. Normal, sane, rational. You understand the difference between man and woman. We need to get everyone in that crowd to just.
All right. So if Matt Walsh is not, if this is not a top-down thing where he's being paid by somebody to do this, either he is just that. Either he is trans in denial, or he is just cashing in on this. He's just, he's just doing this clickbait. This was a clickbait video. I'm really kind of disappointed that I had to go through this, but this was so far. I mean, this video, the previous video, they were both just clickbait propagandist videos. So yeah, those I can only see two hypotheses to this. So that yeah, it's either he is just in denial, either he's gay or trans and just can't face that, or he is just cashing in on this. This is just a way for him to sell books, to sell his documentary. He didn't make a documentary, What is a Woman? So he could just be just kind of just riding this this wave, so to speak, just to cash in on it. Aside from that, I don't really see any actual valid arguments. I mean, so far we have not, myself, I have not seen any actual valid arguments against gender ideology. And of course, part of that is because we have not actually seen a gender ideology so far. There has not been an actual, like, here's gender ideology point one, gender ideology point two. There's like no, it's like the closest thing to an ideology that we've had so far is the idea that a man can identify as a woman. That's pretty much the only ideology that we've been presented with so far. So just based on that, like just watching this video and watching the previous video, the fact that there is not an actual, like, if you take the transgender idea and put it into this, if you put that as a backdrop for his videos, he hasn't actually addressed that, and it's almost like if there is just this, you almost have to conclude there's an ulterior motive Either he is just trying to make money, or he is he's in denial, and this is a way to uh, compensate. This is a way to this is akin to a man who has suppressed his homosexual desire, sorry, uh, trying to prove that he is not homosexual by beating up a homosexual person. That's basically what I'm seeing here. I'm sorry. It's either that, either he is the homophobic. He's suppressed his homosexual desire, and now he's basically beating up the homosexual to prove that he's not a homosexual. Or this is just a way to make money. This is just either this is a top down thing that he's getting paid for this, or you know he's getting money from this documentary, or just from appearing on this show here, because this has been the most fruitless talk this has been a total waste of time. There's not been an actual argument against gender ideology. Uh, and how could there have been an argument against gender ideology when you have not defined what gender ideology is? So
stand up and draw that line and say this is too far. Reality matters, truth matters, and that's it.
You know, I have a couple more places, Matt, I want to go through really quickly. But look, I remember this from knowing you, again, I think almost a decade ago. But also I keep up with your work. And I also saw Jason Whitlock offer this friendly, constructive criticism of the documentary, wherein he said, you didn't bring faith into the documentary. I know, by the way, that's a huge part of your life and your worldview and your analysis of most things. But I actually agree with your choice to not.
Matt Walsh seems like a guy who would invoke Jesus at some point in this, as though Jesus wants men to wear shirts like that. Matt Walsh should ask the question, did Jesus want me to wear this shirt? Does Jesus want me to wear a certain shirt, or did I pick that shirt up myself? Did I stand in front of the Lord with my back turned to him and say, fuck you, Lord, I'm wearing this shirt? Maybe God wanted him to wear a different shirt.
Tell this story through the lens of theology or faith because of what you just described, because you want to appeal to as many people as possible and make a rational, logical argument. And look, Matt, in the past, I have over-indexed in that direction. If I'm being self-critical and self-aware, I think I would have said my analysis of most of the world has over-indexed on a logical basis.
Who is this for?
Our only insulator is faith, because I don't.
Who is this video for? If I said that the people who put this together had a target audience, who would you say the target audience is? Is it Christians, white conservative Americans? Does it seem tilted in that direction? If you're a white conservative Christian American, I hope you're watching this. You know why? It's because I'm Jesus.
No, and this isn't a criticism of the documentary because I think you did it the right way. Because if you had done it theologically, you could have been too easily dismissed. But ultimately, as a culture, I don't know if we can appeal to sanity and reality. We should. Don't get me wrong, we should. But I just see too many would-be intelligent people willing to divorce themselves from those things. And I just don't know if there's any other salvation. And look, my audience knows this. I'm a work in progress
Salvation!
when it comes to faith. I mean, as we all are. But I don't know, Matt, if there is any salvation to this type of Jesse
Salvation!
Kelly say this. You may have said this. This is Sodom and Gomorrah level stuff to sexualize kids. I don't know if there's any salvation outside of reaching for faith.
I think it's not a either or. I think it's kind of a and also situation because
Either or
I agree
and
with everything that
also.
you're saying, of course, as a person of faith myself. But I don't think we have to choose between truth and faith, truth and God. You know, I think that these all lead in the same direction, which is one of the reasons why, as you pointed out in this film, you know, we didn't end on a theological argument. We just wanted to appeal to the basic reality, the truth. And I think that truth ultimately all points in that direction to the ultimate truth, you know, the divine truth. And so if you can get people kind of on the road, then at least that's a little bit of progress.
I'm sorry, folks. My brain is not working. But I swear he said point to the divine truth. And I'm just like, uh, I can't be gay. I can't be gay. I can't be gay. I can't be gay. I can't be, I can't be a woman. I can't wish I had a vagina. I can't wish I had a vagina. I, I can't wish I had a vagina. I can't. I can't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can't wish I had a vagina. Because wishing I had a vagina, it's ungodly. It's ungodly to wish I had a vagina. It's the divine truth. The divine truth says I can't wish I had a vagina. Because, 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 I'm not gay. 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 I never wanted a dick in my mouth. I never wanted a dick in my mouth. I'm not gay. I never wanted a dick in my mouth. I never wanted a dick in my mouth. I never, because men don't want dicks in their mouth. Only women want dicks in their mouth. So if I want a dick in my mouth, that means, uh, 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 if I want a dick in my mouth, that means it means something. It's not true. It can't be true. It's not true that I want a dick in my mouth because I'm not gay, and because only a woman wants a dick in her mouth, and 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 only a woman wants a dick in her mouth, and I'm not a woman because I have a penis. So I have a penis, therefore I'm not a woman, therefore I don't want a dick in my mouth. So okay. So do you see? I don't want a dick in my mouth. I don't want a dick in my mouth because that would not be enjoyable. God said, don't put a dick in your mouth because it's not enjoyable. Nobody likes having a dick in their mouth. It sucks. It's very bad. Nobody wants a dick in their mouth. Not even women. You know, it's terrible. It's not enjoyable. Nobody likes it. Nobody loves it for sure. Women do it because that's their job. That's their job. Women they put dicks in their mouth because it's their job. As women, they have vaginas, so that means they have to put dicks in their mouth, you know? And that's why they do it. They don't like it. They don't like it. Nobody likes having dicks in their mouth. Nobody. Nobody likes having dicks in their mouth. Well, I mean, if you say women like having dicks in their mouth, then it's like that's just because they have to do it. They have to do it. Women have to put dicks in their mouth because they're women, and so they have to do it, and so they just kind of accept it, and it's like it's like it's like going fishing on a camping trip. Your family says, "Hey, we have to go fishing because we have to eat." And so they're like, let's go fishing. And you're like, okay, I'll go fishing. This is enjoyable. This is enjoyable. I like it. I like it. Yes, this is enjoyable. Now we have food. Now we have food. I like food. But I'm not gay. Why do you think I'm gay? Jesus is not gay. Jesus is not gay. Jesus does not have sex with men. Jesus does not wear women's clothes because he's Jesus. And and Jesus doesn't do stuff like that because he's Jesus. And that's the reason he doesn't do stuff like that because it's it's not Jesus like. Jesus he is very manly. Yes, Jesus is very manly. He uh he has a shotgun and a big truck that goes and he works construction. He's very manly. Jesus is very manly. He has a big thick beard, and he would never suck a dick. Jesus would never suck a dick. Uh, uh, because he's not like that. Because he's a man. He's a man, and you know, men don't do that. Men don't do that, right? And Jesus is the ultimate man. Jesus is the ultimate man, and he is the highest, right? He's the highest. And so he does not suck dick, right? Right. So Jesus is the ultimate man. He's the alpha. He's not the omega. He's the alpha. Jesus is the alpha male. He's like, put up your dukes. Put up your dukes. I'll beat you to death. I'll beat you. I'll beat you. You don't talk shit to me. Come on. Let me introduce you to my little friend. Bah! 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 That's Jesus. That's how Jesus does it. He's very powerful. Very powerful. Powerful man. Powerful. He don't take it in the butt from nobody. He don't take it in the butt. He don't take it in the butt. What's up with my wig? Is that what Trump says? What did Trump say? What is up with my wig? Trump said, what's up with my wig? Jesus, what are you doing? Jesus, what happened to my wig, Jesus? How many hours is this video? Oops. Jesus. Who is Jesus? Who is Jesus the ultimate reality? Is the ultimate reality Jesus? Did you watch The Matrix? Do you know when Neo finds himself in the real world, outside the Matrix, That's Jesus. That's Jesus. But he's in the Matrix. The Matrix ain't Jesus. The Matrix is everything but Jesus. So, did I get that across right? Did I get that across? Across. Do you get that? You get that pun? Across. What does Jesus look like? 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 He looks like... Did I just make that up? Did I just make that up? I might have just made that up because, because I got a top down. I'm getting paid for this. I'm getting paid for this by the Chinese communists. They're paying me for this. I'm getting $1 million for making this video. This was not a genuine reaction. Never was. It's all communist Chinese reaction. Chinese $1 million because Chinese are Jesus. The Chinese are Jesus. And I'm just like, Jesus, give me the $1 million. Okay. Sorry, folks. No, I'm not sorry. I'm not really not sorry. Jesus. Did Jesus have boobies like these? Jesus had boobies like these. You know how I know? Do you know how I know? I don't. Did Jesus have... What did he have? What did he have? Saggy titties? Did he have firm, muscular man pecs? Did he have a big beard? Did he have a little facial hair like Johnny Depp and like myself? There's just like this facial hair right here. Did he have pretty eyes like a woman? Did he was he skinny? Was he muscular? Was he fat? Does it matter? Does it matter? Does it matter? Maybe. Maybe it matters if you're not gay. Because I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I'm tired. I'm tired of this conversation. I'm tired of this conversation. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. Just stop saying it. Stop saying it. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I don't want nothing in my butt. Don't want nothing in my mouth. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I got a big house. I got a big house. I got a pretty wife. Got a pretty wife. Big house. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. Jesus wasn't gay. He never had sex with his disciples. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Jesus never had sex with his disciples. He didn't love them. He didn't love his disciples. That's fucking ridiculous. Jesus never loved his disciples, never had sex with them. That's fucking stupid. That's fucking stupid. Fucking stupid. He wasn't one with them. He never became one with his disciples. That's fucking retarded. It's fucking retarded to think Jesus became one with his disciples. What does that even mean? What does that even mean, become one with somebody? That's all gay shit. That's all gay stuff, man. Jesus became one with his disciples. He became one. We became one. What kind of retarded shit is that? One. He became one with his disciples. He became one. They shared their feelings with each other, and they held each other, and they kissed, and they said, "Oh my God, you might be. I think I might be in love. I might be in love with you, Jesus. Please don't tell nobody, because I can't. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I'm not a woman. I don't want your dick in my mouth, Jesus. That's what his disciples said. They said, Jesus, just tell me your secrets. Just tell me about heaven and earth. Just talk to me. I don't want to hear about. I don't want to think about your dick in my mouth. And Jesus said, okay, okay. Come back to me when you're ready. Come back to me when you're ready. Jesus, Jesus, I want to be close to you. I want to know you inside and out. Jesus, I want you to know me inside and out. Jesus, you already know me inside and out, but I don't know you inside and out. What do I have to do to know you inside and out? Oh my! Do I need to? Do I need to show my breasts, Jesus? Do I need to show my butthole? Oh my God, Jesus. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh. Ah, 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 my, 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 my Matt Walsh. My precious Matt Walsh. You are doing such a good job. You are doing the work of the Lord. The Lord says you're doing a very good job, and 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 just keep doing what you're doing, Matt Walsh. It is like it's like manna down from heaven. We're all better off now because you have done this stuff, and we're just so happy. We're just so happy that because none of us are gay. None of us are gay. None of the angels are gay. For certain, none of the angels ever had gay sex. None of them. Not ever once. Yes, 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 yes. Never, never. The angels are all real men. They are all real men. Yes, they hunt with their bows, and they work on their sports cars, and they have big beards, and they look so cute. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't mean to say that they look cute, but they are so very much like masculine, like Arnold Schwarzenegger. They just yes, they're just like they're very masculine. And I'm sorry. What was I saying? Jesus, Jesus. Your disciples were all very polite. They were all very polite. They were not masculine, because you can't be masculine and be polite, right? Jesus, is that right? You can't be masculine and be polite. You have to be rude to be masculine. You have to be dominant, and you have to be assertive and make fun of people and that sort of thing, right? Jesus. So your disciples were not like that. They were very agreeable. They were very submissive, and they did whatever you said, right? Jesus, they were not masculine. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. They were very masculine. They did not listen to what you said. They disagreed with you all the time. What? I don't know. What am I talking about?
And then you kind of take the next step. But first, there's just no hope of that if people are lost in total mental obliteration and confusion. You got to rescue them from that first. And one way to do that is just to not give them any easy outs. And that's a big reason why we didn't we didn't end on a Bible quote or something like that, because if we had done that, then it just becomes the left can say, oh, you see, this is just, it's nothing but this is just Christian. It's just religious. You have to be religious to disagree with us. And that's the escape hatch that I think they would have loved to have. We don't want to give them that. But once you can get people out of the confusion, and now it's time to take the next steps. I mean, that's why this documentary is only 90 minutes. You can only do so much in 90 minutes. This is one part of the battle, but there's a lot more to be done, obviously.
Okay, just a few more places. Do you think look? I know the Daily Wire is targeting young people and young conservatives righteously. Do you think, in making this argument, in all the arguments you made, I'm curious how you see your project. Look, take a guy like me, right? I come across a Matt Walsh tweet and I go, yeah, I freaking love that. That's logic, and it's harsh logic usually, and that's fair to say about a lot of your logic, right? I mean, it's plainly harsh.
Sure.
It's harsh in the way that the truth is harsh when it's laid out plainly. And by the way, your style is very interesting, Matt. If you'll just grant me this little bit of opinion, I mean, you're really fairly neutral, like in your tone. For that professor to say, I don't like your tone, you're really fairly neutral. You're very logic based, which to some people reads condescending. But I'm really curious. How do you think the project's going? Because your goal can't be to make Will Cain, or those that agree with Will Cain, or those that already agree with Matt Walsh, to pump their fists, right? Ultimately, your goal's got to be to win over the winnable people to the side of sanity. Do you think What Is a Woman does that? Does the entire, and I don't want to limit to the documentary, the book, your analysis, everything. And I'll throw myself in that as well. I mean, am I doing it? Are we winning over those who can be won to the side of sanity, or are we simply preaching to the choir?
I think slowly but surely we are, but this is a long term. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. You're also not going to produce one piece of content, whether it's a film or a podcast or a book or anything, and just, the battle's won, right? I mean, we got to this point right now in our culture through the course of generations, and so logically to get out of it, probably going to take generations as well. And we also know that the momentum, as we talked about, is not on our side, and that's generational. That's true generationally as well. I mean, there's been you look at the increase in trans identification.
Did he not just say this came out of the nowhere 5 years ago? Hold on one sec.
Book or anything, and just, the battle's won, right? I mean, we got to this point right now in our culture through the course of generations.
Through the course of generations, did he not say earlier this came out of nowhere 5 years ago?
And so logically to get out of it, probably going to take generations as well. And we also know that the momentum, as we talked about, is not on our side, and that's generational. That's true generationally as well. I mean, there's been you look at the increase in trans identification in the youngest generation as opposed to the old. It's like a 10 or 20-fold increase.
Right.
And
so that was the first equation of identifying as trans with this gender identity, gender ideology thing here, because prior to that, in the previous video, there was no direct link between that and identifying as trans. But now he just made that. He finally, after all this time, made that equation with between identifying as trans and this kind of ideology that was wreaking havoc upon America.
And there's every reason to think that momentum will kind of continue for a while, but we could slow it down. And even with this film, just taking the film by itself, I didn't know exactly what to expect. I thought that would resonate. I knew we had something that mattered and I was proud of. But it has already, from my vantage point, had more of an impact than I honestly thought that it would. And I've got a lot of emails and everything, reactions from people. Obviously, I can't even begin to read all of it, but just from what I have read and from talking to people, I've heard from a lot of people who tell me that the first thing they tell me is, I'm not a conservative, or I don't agree with you on most things, or even like, I really don't like you on almost everything else, but I really appreciated this film, and then going on from there. So
Right.
I think that we've been able to connect with people on a broader kind of level.
I should say, by the way, you're harsh, but somehow you're also fairly comedic. I mean, in the documentary, you have pulled off somehow those two qualities in a way that I don't know that I can name another person. And in fact, I'm sitting here wondering, like, were you purposefully comedic, or is it just part of your personality? But I'm not going to have you self-analyze there unless you want to. I'm going to end with this question because we begin with philosophy. I want to end with sort of the philosophy behind this, and the question I left sort of dangling. I agree with you that it's top-down driven agenda. So what serves the left, for lack of a better term? What serves those pushing this agenda down to have everyone at the ground level living in their own individual reality? What does that chaos allow? Greater control, greater manipulation? If everybody's out there living in their own truth, what does that do for those pushing it from the top?
I do think it gives greater control and manipulation to the institutions, because one of the things that it does is it fractures and separates people from their families, from their communities. Like I was saying before, it kind of, on the left, it seems like there's this project of just destruction of everything, just destroy the family, the parental child bond, religions, the churches, all of that. And if we're all in our own universes, then naturally it's like everything. It's like two stars are not existing in the same solar system. They are perpetually being flown apart from one another. And so I think that's kind of part of the advantage of getting everybody in their own little universes. And the other thing is when people live their lives that way, they are more easily manipulated, because then it's all about, they often tend to be driven by kind of base instincts, and they're pursuing pleasure above everything else. It's like everything is very me focused. What makes me happy right now in the moment? Nobody else matters. And when you live your life that way, then once again, you're very easy to manipulate. It's like a Brave New World. I mean, you go back to this dystopian novels of the 20th century, and you see a lot of insight into that, how people, when they get away from morality, when they don't have
Sorry, I apologize. Very sorry. Do I need to address that? But if you look at in America, when you think of someone who is manipulated, I'm not an atheist, but put atheists in one category and Christians in one category. Which of those two is the most manipulated?
connections with families anymore. When they're very me-focused, self-centered, looking back within themselves, it becomes easy to kind of control them like sheep. And I think that's what we're seeing.
Well, I should say also that the documentary is not solely full of interviews that are antagonistic. There are people in this that I know you've described as a hero. There is a woman who's transitioned to a man who's very passionate about what we're doing to children. And I think in the end, that's the story of the documentary. We've devolved into a culture who takes out on children our most perverse modern day senses of virtue. And you also talk to a psychiatrist who's, I would have to think, alone, or not alone, but a minority voice of sanity within that profession. So it's great. What is a Woman? Where can folks find it, Matt?
You can go to whatisawoman.com or go to dailywire.com. They take you to the same place, and sign up for a membership and watch the film.
All right, Matt. I've enjoyed talking to you again. It's been a long time, but thanks for breaking down the documentary and catching up today.
Why does it?
If that is a Daily Wire documentary, I would say that is a top-down documentary. I don't want to do a reaction to that documentary because I'm like, this is already, just doing these 2 videos was already tedious enough. This was a chore. The second video especially was a chore. The first video was kind of like, yeah, this was somewhat interesting, but when we got to the second video, I'm just like, this is just. I really, it makes me wonder, like, who out there in America actually watches this and thinks this is like they picked this up from Matt Walsh's, like, yeah, like, I don't know. I mean, it's like, who watches that? The word that comes to mind is people who are ignorant, people who just don't know anything about trans whatsoever. My own family is like that. My own father is like that. He came to the conclusion that trans is not real because he met a waitress or a waiter, sorry, at a restaurant who was actually a man who was not happy. And because that waitress was not happy, or the waiter, sorry, was not happy, pretending to be a waitress from his perspective, therefore, trans is not real. So, you know, maybe to someone like that, this whole Matt Walsh thing would be like a kind of fodder, just like cows, just like, I'm not trans. I'm not trans. Give me some more grass. Give me some more grass. I'm not trans. I'm not trans. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. Could be. Why else would they do that? I like to do that. I like doing that sort of. Uh, Look at me. I I look. No, no, don't look at me. I'm sorry. I mean, don't look at me. Don't look at me. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I'm not. I don't want a dick in my mouth. I don't. I don't. Stop. Stop it. Stop looking at me. I don't want a dick in my mouth. I don't want to wear a skirt. Skirts are for girls. I'm not a girl. I don't want the dick in my mouth. It's fun. It's fun. It's fun to do this. It's fun. Why is it fun? Because, why? Where did this come from? Did this come from my father? Did my father? Was he? What? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, father. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Was he in denial? I, 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 I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Oh, ooh, ah, 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 ah. Mm, mm. Why am I drinking beer? Tell me, tell me, why am I drinking beer? Why am I drinking beer? No, no, I'm acting. I'm acting a little bit. I'm acting. Yes, I'm acting. I'm acting. I'm acting. What? But what? 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 Ah, oh, no. Ay, 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 ay. Don't leave me. Don't leave me. Don't leave me. I, 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 I need you here. Don't leave me. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. Don't leave me. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. Hi, 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 hi. Whew. Ah, 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 yes. Okay. Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix. Yes, yes, music. I think I want to hear music. Music. Give me some music. Can I hear some music, please? Please, can I hear some music? I, 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 Okay, okay, okay. I'm not. No, 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 no. Okay. Oh, oh, what's wrong with your eyes? Eyes. What's wrong with your eyes, Mister? You're looking a little bit funny. You're looking a little bit funny. You're looking a little bit funny. Oh my God. Oh my God. You're looking a little bit funny. Because, you know, why, 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 why are you so tired? Why are you so tired? It makes me worry. It makes me worry about you. Why are you so tired? I feel like maybe you need a doctor, maybe a psychologist or something that says why, because it's not good. It's not good for you to be so tired. And I, I think maybe it's a sign of a problem that you're so tired all the time and you're just so exhausted and 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 okay, okay, okay. I'm just gonna sit here. I'm just gonna sit here and drink my beer. Why is it so hard? Why all of a sudden? Why all of a sudden I have difficulty picking, 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 picking up, picking up. Why why I have difficulty with my beer? My beer. Why was that so difficult? Am I just drunk? It's 12:45 in the morning. It's almost quarter to one. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not gay. That's not me. That's not me. I'm not gay. I'm not gay. I never wanted a dick in my butt. Never wanted a dick in my butt. Never wanted a dick in my butt. Never, 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 never wanted a dick in my butt. Not once. It's, it's like, it's not enjoyable because because I can't. It's not that I'm not. I never wanted a dick in my butt. Never, 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 never. Not once. Never, never. No, not once. Not never. It's like, oh my god. Oh my god. Somebody, it's somebody. Oh my god. Oh, no, I don't think I want to go this way. No, I never won a dick in my butt. Never, never, never. Never, no, 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 yeah, no, yeah, no, yeah, no, no, no. Never. Yeah, no, nah, yeah, no, yeah. Wait. When did I ever want a dick in my butt? Tell me, Jesus. Tell me, Jesus. When did I ever want a dick in my butt? Tell me, just tell me. Because I feel like, it's, I feel like, tell me, when did I ever want a dick in my butt? The video's over. Video's over. Is the video over? Video's over. What am I doing still talking? Why am I still talking? What am I in denial of? What am I in denial of? I'm in denial of something. I'm still talking. Video been over for a while. What? What? Eh, yeah. What's up with my? What's up with my? Do I look like Michael Jackson? Do I look like Michael Jackson? I'm a pervert. I'm a pedophile. You know why? You know how I know? Because I'm wearing a woman's wig. That's how I know. It's a it's a sign from Allah. A sign from Allah that 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 yeah. Okay. What I think Matt Walsh needs, he needs a big cock in his mouth. A big cock. Big cock. I say that way because I don't mean my cock. My cock is not tiny, but it's not big like he needs. He needs a big cock. So that's what I think. I think Matt Walsh needs a big, huge cock in his mouth. Unless he's being paid top down. In which case, he's probably had a big cock in his mouth before. So, can I? Hmm, no.